If you cross that line, the blood will be on your conscience, not ours. President Nathan Cole's voice carried through the vast chamber with the quiet certainty of a man who had already accepted whatever came next, and for one long second the Galactic Assembly fell silent before Sovereign Kaler Voss leaned back on his obsidian throne and laughed. It was not the nervous laugh of uncertainty. It was the confident amusement of someone who had ruled for centuries without ever hearing the word no. Representatives from more than 100 civilizations watched from rising tiers of polished stone and shimmering crystal as enormous holographic banners displayed the crest of the sovereign dominion above the assembly floor. Every news network across known space carried the meeting live. Earth had been summoned to answer for refusing to surrender control of the Soul Warp Gate, the only stable passage connecting the inner colonies to the rest of human territory. Nathan Cole stood alone at the center platform, wearing a simple dark suit that looked almost plain beside the elaborate robes, armor, and jeweled uniforms surrounding him. His silver hair was neatly combed. His hands rested calmly behind his back. He looked more like a retired attorney than the leader of a species facing impossible odds. Beside the sovereign, High Marshal Sarek folded his armored arms and stared at the human with open contempt. "You have one final opportunity," Sarek announced. "Transfer authority over the Soul Gate, dismantle your orbital defenses, and recognize Dominion sovereignty. Refuse, and your people will become another forgotten chapter in galactic history." Cameras turned toward Nathan, waiting for desperation, fear, or anger. Instead, he quietly adjusted the cuff of his jacket. "Mr. President," whispered Olivia Grant through the tiny receiver hidden in his ear. "Every allied delegate is watching." Nathan answered without moving his lips. "Good. Let them remember this." Sovereign Voss slowly descended the marble steps until he stood only a few feet away. Towering nearly 8 feet tall, dressed in black ceremonial armor trimmed with gold, he projected absolute confidence. "Your silence disappoints me, human," he said. "I expected negotiations." Nathan finally looked up into the sovereign's eyes. "You already made your decision before inviting us here." Several delegates shifted uneasily. Voss smiled. "Correct." A wave of laughter rippled through the Dominion delegation. Nathan gave the faintest nod, almost as though confirming something to himself instead of reacting to the insult. "Then allow me to make ours equally clear." His voice never rose. "Earth has one final red line. You may threaten us. You may sanction us. You may isolate us. But if you force your way through that gate, you will unleash consequences you cannot measure." Another laugh echoed through the chamber, louder this time. A reptilian ambassador actually shook his head in disbelief. "Consequences?" Voss repeated with a grin. "From a civilization whose navy numbers barely a fraction of mine." Nathan did not answer immediately. He simply glanced toward the giant observation window where distant stars shimmered beyond the station. "Some doors," he finally said, "stay locked for a reason." Voss turned away before the translator had even finished. "Enough." He raised one armored hand toward the assembly. "Record this moment. The sovereign Dominion rejects Earth's demands." The massive seal of the Dominion flashed across every screen. "At 0600 tomorrow morning Eastern Standard Time, my fleet will cross the Soul Warp Gate." Nathan closed his eyes for less than a second, then opened them again with the same calm expression he had worn since entering the chamber. "Then this meeting is over." Without another word, he turned and began walking toward the exit. Behind him, laughter filled the hall once more. None of them noticed that several of Earth's allied delegates were no longer laughing. They were watching Nathan leave with the uneasy expression of people who suddenly realized the quietest man in the room had never been trying to save his own world. He had been trying to save everyone else's. Nathan Cole never looked back as the doors of the Galactic Assembly closed behind him. The laughter faded the moment the soundproof seals locked into place, replaced by the quiet hum of the diplomatic corridor stretching nearly a quarter mile toward the human delegation hangar. Olivia Grant caught up beside him, her heels tapping against the polished floor. "They think you blinked," she said carefully. Nathan gave a small smile. "Good." She studied his face, searching for any sign that the meeting had shaken him, but all she found was the same calm expression he had carried through the assembly. "You knew he would reject every offer. He stopped listening before we ever arrived." Olivia hesitated. "Then why come?" Nathan slipped a small data card into his coat pocket. Because history always asks who gave the last chance. Several alien journalists rushed forward behind the security barrier, shouting questions that echoed through the corridor. Mr. President, is Earth preparing to surrender? Will humanity evacuate the Sol colonies? Do you admit the Dominion has overwhelming military superiority? Nathan never slowed down. He simply kept walking until the security doors closed behind him. Minutes later, aboard the Terran diplomatic cruiser Resolute, Admiral Claire Donovan stood inside the command center watching a live tactical display of the Sol system. Hundreds of tiny blue icons marked civilian stations, freight routes, orbital hospitals, research platforms, and family settlements spread across Earth, Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt. Her executive officer, Commander Ryan Mercer, walked in carrying a fresh intelligence packet. Long-range surveillance confirms Dominion Fleet Group 8 just altered course. Claire looked up, toward us. Ryan nodded once. Estimated arrival at the Sol Gate in 23 hours. No one in the room reacted with panic. Years of training had erased that habit. Claire folded her arms. Has the president called? Before Ryan could answer, every monitor flashed with a secure encrypted channel. Nathan appeared on the main screen from a quiet office somewhere inside the cruiser. He had already removed his jacket and loosened his tie as though he had just finished another ordinary day at work. Status? He asked. Claire answered immediately. Dominion fleets are moving exactly as projected. Nathan nodded. Maintain civilian traffic. Keep commercial schedules normal. Ryan frowned. Sir, people will notice when Dominion warships enter the system. Nathan looked directly at him. That is exactly what Sovereign Voss wants. Fear spreads faster than fleets. Claire understood before anyone else did. You want everyday life to continue. I want every child to wake up tomorrow believing it is another ordinary morning. Silence settled over the bridge. Ryan slowly exhaled. And the order? Nathan glanced away for only a second before returning his eyes to the camera. Not yet. The transmission ended. Claire stared at the blank screen for another moment before turning toward the tactical display. Thousands of blue icons continued moving through space exactly as they had an hour earlier. Cargo freighters delivered supplies. Passenger shuttles followed routine schedules. Orbital schools dismissed students. Coffee shops on Luna served the morning rush. Earth looked completely untroubled. 22 hours later, the Dominion Armada emerged from hyperspace just beyond the outer defense perimeter. Hundreds of massive warships formed perfect attack formations without meeting a single interceptor. High Marshal Sarek smiled from the bridge of the flagship Dominion Crown as sensor officers reported the impossible. No resistance, one officer announced. Orbital cannons remain inactive. Human patrol groups are holding position. Sarek chuckled. The president finally accepted reality. But deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains, hidden below layers of reinforced granite older than American history itself, a single forgotten terminal flickered to life for the first time in 178 years. One line of white text appeared across a black screen. Authorization request detected. Waiting for final condition. High Marshal Sarek stood at the forward observation deck of the Dominion Crown with his hands folded behind his back as the brilliant blue curve of Earth slowly grew larger across the panoramic viewport. He had imagined this moment for years. Every intelligence report had described humanity as stubborn, resourceful, and unusually resilient. Yet what he saw through the sensors looked almost disappointingly ordinary. Cargo ships continued following scheduled flight paths. Civilian transports crossed between Earth and Luna without escorts. Solar power arrays rotated peacefully in orbit. Report, Sarek ordered. A navigation officer glanced over the latest scans. No active interception force detected. Human orbital defense platforms remain in passive mode. Long-range missile batteries are powered down. Commercial communications continue without interruption. Sarek smiled. Exactly as the Sovereign predicted. Across the bridge, another officer added. Our cyber divisions have penetrated 87% of publicly accessible Terran networks. No signs of emergency mobilization. Financial markets remain open. Public transportation is operating normally. Several Dominion commanders exchanged amused looks. One of them laughed quietly. They are pretending nothing is happening. Sarek shook his head. No, they have accepted reality. There is a difference. Nearly 60 million miles away, aboard the Resolute, Admiral Claire Donovan watched the same Dominion fleet from a tactical display instead of a window. Hundreds of crimson icons continued advancing exactly along the projected path that Earth intelligence had calculated months earlier. Commander Ryan Mercer leaned over the operations table. "They are following the model down to the minute." Claire nodded without taking her eyes off the screen. "Arrogant commanders rarely improvise." Ryan lowered his voice. "People are asking why we are still holding fire." Claire looked around the bridge. Every officer appeared calm on the surface, but she could read the tension in small details. A clenched jaw, fingers resting too long on a console, someone taking an unnecessary sip of cold coffee. They trusted the plan. They simply did not know all of it. Claire quietly answered, "Because the president did not build this strategy around winning the first move." At that exact moment, inside a secure command room beneath the White House, Nathan Cole sat alone with a paper notebook open beside a cup of untouched coffee. No advisors crowded around him. No television cameras waited outside the door. The room felt almost strangely ordinary. A soft chime interrupted the silence as Olivia Grant entered carrying a classified folder. "The Sovereign has transmitted another message." Nathan accepted the folder without urgency. Olivia watched him read the single page. "He is offering us one last opportunity to surrender before his fleet reaches the gate." Nathan closed the folder. "He is not offering mercy." Olivia sighed. "No." Nathan stood and walked toward the narrow, reinforced window overlooking the underground operations center. Dozens of analysts worked quietly below without raising their voices. It reminded him of an airport before sunrise rather than the command center of a civilization facing invasion. "Do you know why he keeps sending messages?" Nathan asked. Olivia thought for a moment. "To make history remember that Earth refused every chance." Nathan gave a faint smile. "Exactly." He placed the folder into a secure shredder without replying. Thousands of miles away, Dominion reconnaissance drones approached the final navigation beacon floating just outside the Soul Warp Gate. The small station had no visible weapons, no escort, and only one automated broadcast repeating every 30 seconds. This marker designates the final restricted approach. Unauthorized passage beyond this point violates Terran sovereign territory. Dominion pilots chuckled as they listened to the warning cycle again and again. One officer looked toward Sarek. "Permission to remove the beacon?" Sarek barely glanced at the display. "Granted. Clear the approach." The drone accelerated toward the silent structure. Deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains, the forgotten terminal that had waited in darkness for 178 years registered a single incoming signal. The black screen flickered once before new words appeared beneath the first line. "Final condition verified. Stand by for authorization." Nobody aboard the Dominion Crown expected the tiny navigation beacon to matter. It drifted alone against the endless black, no larger than a suburban water tower, its white navigation light blinking with quiet consistency as the recorded warning repeated one final time. "Unauthorized passage beyond this point violates Terran sovereign territory." Dominion engineering crews barely paid attention as a utility drone accelerated toward the station. "Remove it," High Marshal Sarek said without emotion. "We are finished asking permission." The drone released a focused cutting beam. Seconds later, the beacon split cleanly into two silent pieces that slowly drifted apart before disappearing into the darkness. A young sensor officer smiled. "Approach corridor is clear, sir." Sarek nodded. "Advance the fleet." Hundreds of Dominion warships surged forward together in perfect formation, their engines glowing like a moving wall of stars. Yet almost immediately, something felt wrong. "Report," Sarek ordered. The bridge became unusually quiet. One technician frowned at his console. "I am detecting a synchronized signal pulse." Another looked up. "Source unknown." "Is it a weapon?" Sarek asked. "Negative." The officer hesitated. "It appears to be, leaving the system." Deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains, several thousand feet below forests that had stood for centuries, the forgotten terminal suddenly flooded the underground chamber with soft white light. Dust drifted from the ceiling as equipment that had not moved in generations quietly came alive. Cooling systems awakened. Ancient servers began humming one after another. Thick vault doors unlocked with heavy mechanical clicks that echoed through the empty corridors. Admiral Claire Donovan stepped into the chamber beside President Nathan Cole. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. They simply watched row after row of dormant systems awaken as though they had only been asleep overnight instead of nearly 2 centuries. A calm synthetic voice filled the room. Strategic Intelligence, Core Argus Online. Identity verification complete. Welcome back, President Nathan Cole. Claire slowly turned toward Nathan. It still remembers your authorization. Nathan gave a faint nod. It remembers every president. The enormous display at the center of the chamber illuminated the surrounding walls with a star map unlike anything used by the modern Terran Navy. Countless markers appeared far beyond known shipping lanes, scattered through regions, every navigation chart labeled as empty space. Claire stared at the map. These locations are outside every registered military database. Nathan quietly answered. That is exactly where they were meant to stay. Argus continued speaking with steady precision. Final condition confirmed. Terran sovereign territory violated. Black Protocol 7 eligible for activation. Claire looked directly at Nathan. This is the last chance to stop. Nathan remained silent for several moments before asking one question. Civilian evacuation status? Argus replied instantly. 99.98% complete through routine commercial scheduling. Public awareness remains minimal. Claire finally understood why cargo routes and passenger flights had continued without interruption. Every ordinary schedule had quietly moved people away from the future battlefield without creating panic. Nathan placed his right hand onto the biometric authorization panel. Proceed. A soft tone echoed through the chamber. Authorization accepted. Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters buried inside abandoned relay stations, forgotten mining colonies, and lifeless moons activated simultaneously. Their signals traveled faster than conventional communications, passing silently through deep space where no Dominion sensors were watching. On the bridge of the Dominion Crown, warning lights suddenly appeared across every tactical display. Sir, the communications officer said, struggling to keep his voice steady. Long-range detection grids are registering multiple gravitational disturbances. Sarek stepped toward the main screen. How many? The officer swallowed. The computers cannot calculate an exact number. New contacts continue appearing beyond maximum sensor range. Another technician interrupted before anyone else could speak. None of them are approaching from Earth. The bridge fell silent. Every new signal was arriving from the darkness between the stars, from places where every chart insisted there was absolutely nothing. The first warp fracture appeared so far beyond the Dominion formation that several sensor officers dismissed it as background interference. Then a second one opened. Then 12 more. Within less than 30 seconds, the tactical display transformed into a sea of silent anomalies stretching across nearly 2 million miles of empty space. No energy spikes. No recognizable drive signatures. No transponder codes. Just impossible distortions that should not have existed. Identify those contacts, High Marshal Sarek ordered. His confidence remained steady, but the bridge had lost its earlier swagger. The sensor chief swallowed before answering. We cannot, sir. Every database returns the same result. Unknown. Another officer interrupted. Visual confirmation is coming online. The main display shifted from tactical graphics to live telescope feeds. Out of the darkness emerged enormous silhouettes unlike anything the Dominion had encountered. Their hulls were not sleek like modern cruisers. They looked heavy, angular, almost industrial, built from dark alloys that reflected almost no starlight. There were no glowing insignias, no ceremonial lighting, no decorative architecture. They looked like machines designed with only one purpose in mind. How old are those designs? One Dominion captain whispered. The intelligence officer searched through archived records. His expression slowly changed from confusion to disbelief. This cannot be correct. Sarek turned sharply. Speak. The hull geometry matches fragments recovered from pre-expansion human archives. He looked back at the screen. Estimated age, 180 years. Laughter briefly echoed across the bridge before fading almost immediately. One captain shook his head. Impossible. No fleet survives that long. The intelligence officer quietly answered. No fleet should. Deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains, Admiral Claire Donovan watched identical images appear across Argus command displays. She had spent her entire career studying classified military history, yet even she recognized only a handful of the vessel classes emerging from the darkness. "Those are museum pieces," she murmured. Nathan Cole remained focused on the tactical map. "No." Claire looked at him. Nathan's voice stayed calm. "Museums display copies. These are the originals." Argus spoke again. "Black Fleet arrival proceeding according to contingency schedule. 43% complete." Claire frowned. 43%. The artificial intelligence answered without emotion. "Additional task groups remain in transit from deep reserve positions." She slowly turned toward Nathan. "There are more." Nathan did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward an old framed photograph hanging alone on the concrete wall. It showed a much younger president standing beside an elderly naval officer wearing a uniform from another era. Claire had never seen the picture before. "Who is he?" she asked. Nathan smiled faintly. "Admiral Benjamin Ross, the founder of Black Protocol." Nathan nodded. "He once told me something I did not understand until today." Claire waited. "He said the safest weapon is the one your enemy forgets exists." At that same moment aboard the Dominion Crown, another wave of alerts erupted across every console. "Marshal," the communications officer called out. "We are broadcasting standard identification requests." Response: "None." "Challenge them again." "Already attempted." The young officer hesitated before adding, "They are not ignoring us. They simply are not acknowledging that we are here." A quiet unease spread across the bridge. Every Dominion commander had spent decades believing that communication always preceded conflict, negotiation, or surrender. Yet these ships offered none of those. They simply continued arriving in disciplined silence, each formation locking into precise positions around the outer edges of the Sol system without a single unnecessary movement. Finally, one of the youngest sensor analysts leaned closer to his console, then slowly looked up with a pale face. "Marshal," Sarek met his eyes. "What is it?" The analyst pointed toward the tactical display where hundreds of dark vessels had completed their formation. "They are not surrounding Earth." The bridge fell completely silent. "They are surrounding us." High Marshal Sarek refused to believe what he was seeing. He stepped closer to the tactical display until the pale light reflected across his uniform. "No fleet appears from nowhere," he said. "There is always a supply chain. There is always a shipyard. There is always a trail." The intelligence officer quietly replied, "We have searched every known sector for 100 years. There is no record of these vessels ever existing." Sarek turned sharply. "Then our records are incomplete." He looked toward the communication station. "Open a channel to Sovereign Kaler Voss." Within seconds, the Sovereign's image filled the bridge. Unlike the younger officers, Voss showed almost no emotion. He studied the tactical display for several moments before speaking. "Interesting." Sarek frowned. "Interesting." Voss folded his hands. "Fear is a weapon, Marshal. Humanity understands theater. They have hidden obsolete ships, painted them black, and waited for the perfect dramatic entrance. Our sensors disagree. Sensors have been fooled before." Voss looked directly into the camera. "Do not give them the victory they seek." On Earth, Admiral Claire Donovan watched the Dominion fleet hesitate instead of advancing. "He is buying time," she said. Nathan Cole nodded. He finally realized uncertainty is more dangerous than numbers. Claire crossed her arms. "Will he retreat?" Nathan slowly shook his head. "No. Men like Kaler Voss have spent too many years believing they cannot be wrong. Pride will push him one step farther." Argus interrupted with another update. "Black Fleet deployment complete. Reserve Command awaiting operational assignment." Claire looked toward the giant tactical display. Hundreds of dark vessels now occupied precise positions throughout deep space. None had activated visible weapons. None had transmitted demands. They simply waited. "They have perfect firing solutions," Claire observed. Nathan answered quietly. "And they are disciplined enough not to use them." A secure transmission suddenly appeared from one of the newly arrived ships. The identification tag surprised everyone in the room. "Fleet Commander Marcus Hale." Claire accepted the channel. The face that appeared belonged to a man in his late 60s with weathered features and calm gray eyes. His dark uniform carried no modern insignia, only a small American flag stitched above his name. "Good morning, Madam Admiral," Marcus said with an easy smile. You are late, Claire answered. By exactly 34 seconds, Marcus replied. I apologize. One of the old reactors insisted on reminding us how old she is. Even Nathan smiled for the first time that day. It is good to see you again, Marcus. Likewise, Mr. President. Marcus glanced toward the tactical map. The guests appear nervous. Nathan became serious again. Stand by. They have not crossed the final threshold. Marcus nodded once. Understood. We remain restrained. Back aboard the Dominion Crown, Sovereign Voss had reached his own conclusion. Marshal, he said firmly, send a reconnaissance wing through the formation. I want close visual confirmation. If these relics are real, we will know. If they are a bluff, we expose it before the entire galaxy. Sarek smiled with renewed confidence. An excellent idea. Moments later, several fast Dominion scout craft accelerated toward the nearest dark formation. Every bridge officer leaned toward their displays as the distance closed. The lead pilot transmitted continuously. No defensive response. No target locks. No warnings. Sarek allowed himself another smile. You see? They are empty shells. The scout formation slipped between two enormous black warships without interference. Then the lead pilot's voice suddenly changed. Marshal, I am reading. This cannot be correct. Report. A long pause followed. These ships are fully crewed. Another pause. Life support has been active the entire time. Sarek narrowed his eyes. How many personnel? The pilot answered in a voice that had completely lost its confidence. Sir, according to internal scans, every ship appears to have been waiting for us before we even entered the Sol system. The scout pilot did not speak again for several seconds. The only sound reaching the Dominion Crown was the quiet hiss of static as every officer waited for an explanation that never seemed to come. Finally his voice returned, softer than before. Marshal, they are watching us. Sarek frowned. Clarify. Every viewport I pass, every command deck, there are people standing inside. Nobody is moving. Nobody is aiming weapons. They are simply watching us fly through. An uneasy silence settled across the bridge. Even seasoned Dominion officers exchanged uncertain glances. Fleet doctrine taught that a warship under threat immediately illuminated targeting systems or launched interceptors. These human vessels did neither. They behaved as though the Dominion scouts were already accounted for. Back beneath the Appalachian Mountains, Admiral Claire Donovan folded her hands behind her back while Marcus Hale's image remained on the command display. Your crews are holding formation perfectly, Claire said. Marcus smiled faintly. They have had a very long time to practice patience. Nathan Cole looked toward him. How is morale? Marcus almost laughed. Mr. President, most of these men and women believe they would never receive another deployment order. Some have spent decades preparing for a day they hoped would never come. Nobody is eager for a fight. They are simply ready if one is forced upon them. Nathan nodded with quiet appreciation. That is exactly why I trusted you. Argus interrupted before either man could continue. Dominion Command Network displaying elevated strategic uncertainty. Probability of immediate withdrawal, 21%. Probability of escalation, 79%. Claire sighed. There it is. Nathan did not look surprised. Pride rarely retreats on the first invitation. On the Dominion flagship, Sovereign Kaler Voss appeared once again on the main display. This time his expression had changed. The confidence remained, but there was now something else beneath it. Curiosity. Marshal, he said calmly, humanity has invested enormous effort into preserving this illusion. I will admit they have exceeded expectations. Sarek hesitated. You still believe this is theater? Voss answered without hesitation. No civilization hides its greatest strength forever unless that strength has limits. He stepped closer to the camera. Find the limit. Sarek immediately turned toward operations. Deploy electronic warfare. Disrupt their communications. Blind their sensors. Test every layer of their defenses without opening fire. Orders spread across the Dominion fleet within seconds. Specialized electronic vessels activated powerful interference arrays. Waves of encrypted disruption swept silently across nearby space, designed to cripple targeting systems and isolate command ships from one another. Every Dominion officer watched the tactical displays, waiting for confusion to spread through the human formation. Nothing happened. The dark ships neither shifted position nor acknowledged the electronic assault. Their formations remained perfectly aligned. Their communications never fluctuated. One confused technician checked his console twice before speaking. Marshal, our interference is not reaching them. Impossible. It is being ignored. Sarek narrowed his eyes. Blocked. The technician slowly shook his head. No, sir. He looked genuinely unsettled. They are not using the communication spectrum we understand. Across the human command center, Argus calmly announced. Hostile electronic intrusion detected. No operational impact. Marcus Hale chuckled. Some habits never change. Claire looked at him. You expected this? Of course, Marcus replied. Every generation believes it invents a smarter way to confuse the enemy. The old engineers who built this fleet planned for people they would never live to meet. Nathan quietly walked toward the central tactical display. Hundreds of dark ships remained motionless around the Dominion formation like mountains surrounding a valley. Then a new alert appeared across every human console at exactly the same moment. Argus spoke with the same measured tone it had used all day. Dominion Fleet Group 3 has begun charging primary weapon systems. Claire looked directly at Nathan. They are about to make their choice. Nathan stared silently at the glowing red icons before answering with quiet certainty. No. He looked toward Marcus Hale. They already have. The first Dominion weapon array finished charging, but no order to fire came. High Marshal Sarek stood motionless, waiting for Sovereign Kaler Voss to speak. The bridge felt smaller than it had an hour earlier. Every officer understood that whatever happened next would be remembered for generations. Voss finally broke the silence. Open a direct channel to President Nathan Cole. Seconds later, Nathan's face appeared on the main display. He was still wearing the same white shirt with the sleeves neatly rolled to his forearms. Behind him, there were no flashing alarms, no frantic commanders, only Admiral Claire Donovan standing quietly beside the tactical table. Voss studied Nathan for several long moments. You wanted this conversation. Nathan answered evenly. No, I wanted you to listen during the first one. Voss ignored the remark. These ships. Who built them? Nathan looked toward the tactical display before replying. People who survived a different age. Why hide them? Because the last time humanity relied on them, we almost forgot how to live in peace. Several Dominion officers exchanged confused looks. They had expected arrogance, not regret. Voss narrowed his eyes. You expect me to believe you buried your greatest military advantage voluntarily? Nathan nodded once. Power without restraint eventually becomes the enemy of everyone. The Sovereign remained silent. It was the first answer that did not fit the image he had built of humanity. Before he could respond, Argus quietly interrupted inside the human command center. Dominion Fleet Group 3 has disengaged primary weapon charging. Claire glanced toward Nathan. One commander lost his nerve. Nathan slowly shook his head. No. Someone below Voss has started asking the right questions. At that same moment, aboard one of the Dominion cruisers near the outer formation, Captain Elian Rohr stared through the forward viewport at one of the enormous black human warships drifting less than 5 miles away. It had not moved a single inch since arriving. No threat display, no warning lights, no attempt to intimidate. Curious, Elian ordered a high-resolution optical zoom toward one of the observation decks. The image sharpened. Human sailors stood behind the transparent armor glass. Some wore gray hair. Others looked barely old enough to have graduated from the Naval Academy. One woman held a coffee mug while quietly reading from a printed notebook. Another crew member looked out at the Dominion ships with folded arms before turning to speak to a younger officer. Nobody looked frightened. Nobody celebrated. They simply carried on with practiced discipline. Elian quietly whispered, "They expected us." Back on the Dominion Crown, his report reached Sarek within seconds. "Marshal," Elian said over the secure channel, "this is not a fleet assembled in response to our arrival. They have been operational long before today." Sarek remained unconvinced. "That changes nothing." Elian hesitated before continuing. "Sir, there is something else." "Proceed." Their hulls show maintenance records spanning decades. Fresh repairs, replaced armor sections, updated reactors. These ships have not been abandoned. Even Sovereign Voss leaned forward. Elian finished with a sentence that drained the confidence from several Dominion officers. Someone has been quietly maintaining this entire fleet for generations without letting the galaxy notice. Nathan listened to the intercepted report without satisfaction. Claire looked toward him. The truth is reaching them. Nathan quietly folded his hands. Only part of it. Claire frowned. There is more. Nathan looked at the old photograph of Admiral Benjamin Ross hanging beside the command table. They still think the Black Fleet is humanity's greatest secret. Before Claire could ask another question, Argus announced a new update. Long-range sensors confirm multiple unidentified arrivals approaching the Sol system. Claire immediately checked the display. The newcomers were not human. They were ships from neighboring civilizations, each answering the same question after witnessing the impossible appearance of the Black Fleet. The entire galaxy was coming to see what would happen next. The observation galleries of the Galactic Assembly had never been so crowded. Civilian broadcasts from every major civilization streamed live as fleets from across known space stopped at a respectful distance from the Sol system, not to join a battle, but to witness a decision. For the first time in living memory, nobody knew who truly held the future. Sovereign Kaler Voss remained on the secure channel, his expression unreadable. The confidence that had carried him into the Sol system had not disappeared, but it had changed into something quieter. He looked directly at Nathan Cole. If I withdraw today, history will call it weakness. Nathan answered without hesitation. History usually rewards the people who know when to stop making mistakes. Neither man spoke for several seconds. Across the Dominion fleet, thousands of officers waited for an order that refused to come. Across the human fleet, Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the lead Black Fleet carrier with his hands resting lightly on the command rail. A young lieutenant beside him finally asked the question everyone had been carrying. Sir, if they move again? Marcus smiled gently. Then we do our job. And if they leave? Marcus looked through the forward viewport toward the distant blue glow of Earth. Then we did our job even better. Back in the underground command center, Claire Donovan quietly watched the tactical display as one red Dominion icon slowly changed direction. Then another. Within moments, entire formations began pivoting away from the Sol system in perfect military order. There was no celebration inside the human command center. Nobody cheered. Nobody applauded. Engineers kept monitoring their stations. Analysts continued recording telemetry. Nathan simply released a slow breath that almost nobody noticed. Argus broke the silence. Dominion withdrawal confirmed. Probability of renewed hostilities has fallen below 5%. Claire looked toward Nathan with a small smile. You were right. Nathan shook his head. No. She frowned. About what? He looked at the Great Star map one last time. We were fortunate that they remembered they were still capable of choosing. Hours later, Sovereign Kaler Voss addressed the Galactic Assembly once again. His words surprised the entire galaxy. The Dominion recognizes the sovereign borders of Earth and the Sol system. Effective immediately, all military operations are suspended. Shock spread through the chamber, but Nathan never reacted. He quietly gathered his notebook, thanked the assembly, and walked out exactly as he had before. Only this time, nobody laughed as he left. Weeks later, the Black Fleet vanished as silently as it had appeared. One by one, the enormous ships slipped back into the darkness beyond every known chart. Their locations were erased once more. Their crews returned to patient watch, hoping another generation would never need to call them home. The old photograph of Admiral Benjamin Ross remained hanging in the underground command center. Beneath it, Nathan placed a small brass plaque carrying a single sentence that future presidents would read before entering office. Humanity is strongest when it has the power to win and still chooses peace. Years afterward, children across dozens of worlds would ask why no empire had ever invaded Earth again. The official histories would speak about hidden fleets, forgotten technology, and impossible strategy. But the people who had actually stood in those command rooms knew the real answer was much simpler. The day Earth drew its final line, humanity proved that real strength was never measured by the weapons it could unleash. It was measured by the mercy it was willing to preserve until someone left it no other choice.